kind of, there's a couple of other tribes, right, within the Conservative Party. There's probably the sort of like Trussite, free markets, libertarian, individualistic type strain of thought, and then probably what's left of a kind of one nation Cameroon, the ones that weren't purged by Boris Johnson, so who aren't David Gauke, Rory Stewart, and that kind of character. And of those three rough tribes, there's kind of going to be this battle, right, for what the Conservative Party thinks next. I mean, Ava, how would you, if you were to talk about Rishi Sunak's Conservative Party, not necessarily National Conservatism, so just to put a bit more context on this before we go into NatCons in a bit more detail, how would you characterise Rishi's Conservative administration? What do you think? If you had to sort of put an ideological bent on it, what is it?
Would have been really handy for you to ask me this before we came on. I could have had a nice think about it.
I'm going to sit in silence for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
While you think about it.
I actually think it doesn't know what it is.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of Tory MPs know that they're in marginal seats and they probably will lose their seat at the next election. And I think some of them are now clawing on the kind of populist rhetoric that, the close our borders, stop the boats, that sort of thing, to bring back some populist votes. And then there's some others, maybe like the Danny Krugers, who made a big appearance at this conference, who are thinking, no, let's go back to small c conservatism. Let's talk about the nuclear family. Let's talk about Christianity, getting that back on at play. I think it really doesn't know what it is. And I think actually Rishi especially doesn't know what it is, because he's actually just, have you ever just thought that he's just too young as a politician? Not in his age, but like in terms of how long he's been a politician to be Prime Minister.
Is there not a point about there's no such thing as a Sunakite? As in, there was no momentum in the party for when he became Prime Minister. He was forced through by the parliamentary Conservative Party as kind of being like, okay, who's the most boring option we have, the least divisive option we have to stop the chaos of trust, to try and like stem the flow of the blood from the wounds of Truss and Johnson. So he didn't win in the popular vote when he was up against Truss. He didn't win when they went to the party members. Mm-hmm. There's no one who speaks. It's not quite embarrassing. Like, he's Prime Minister, and people are already talking about like what the next guy is going to do. There's no one talking about what his legacy is. Like, and I agree with that. There's no point, because he's not going to have a legacy, because he's going to get routed.
But I also think it's unfair to say that Suella Braverman is like making a play. Not unfair, but I think it's too simplistic to say that Suella Braverman is making a play to be Prime Minister. Like, I think this massive right-wing rhetoric that she's come out with in her speech, was signed off by the Home Office. That was signed off by Number 10. She is a tool for the Conservatives right now to pull Rishi's narrative more right and actually make the party look more interesting.
I'm really interested by Suella's speech, because large parts of it were sort of bemoaning the current Conservative government's immigration policy, for which she is directly responsible. It takes a certain amount of bollocks to go up there and be like, man, our immigration policy fucking sucks. And it's like, Suella.
When I get my hands on the person in charge of our immigration policy, they are going to be...
No, for sure.
It's like Ollie going, who the fuck put me in this shirt?
God, I really...
What are you trying to say about the shirt?
God, I really hate all that content PoliticsJOE makes.
Someone should do something about that. So there's that. Then there's also just the general principle, right, of collective responsibility, of which, as a cabinet minister, she is allegedly a part of, i.e. she supports the government's agenda. So when you say that she's not sort of pitching herself here as a leader, I struggle to comprehend or understand what she had to say in terms, because like, how can you go out there and if you're bemoaning the policies that you're enacting, what are you doing if not rolling the pitch and preparing the Conservative-minded maybe members, people who will vote for you, about your views in advance of a Conservative leadership election? Like, what's she doing if it's not that?
Is it possible, if the Tory party doesn't know what it is at the moment, they also don't know what sort of voter they're trying to appeal to? So maybe each cabinet minister just sort of rolls up with a different interpretation of the manifesto.
Fucking it'll play.
Something sticks. Like at Christmas,
should we
people buy
rejoin
Quality
the EU?
Oh, no, not that.
Oh, no.
Who said that? Who said that?
Should we join the...
On that point about what Rishi thinks, though, he's... I think you can make an argument that he's pretty authoritarian, right?
100%.
You look at the sort of the Public Order Act, Police Crime Court Sentencing Bill. Deeply restrictive legislation that impinges on civil liberties in a really quite extreme way. He invoked, was it Section 22, the thing that stops the Scottish government from something like that, right? Some section, whatever. And what's the first instance of it being used? It's to block gender self-ID. Banning laughing gas. Like this is really like weird socially conservative. Like it's really authoritarian. I think his politics. I think people, because of the vibes of the Tory election contest, where somehow he was seen as the sort of liberal Silicon Valley type, and Liz Truss was the sort of arch right-wing thinker, even though she was a Remain campaigner, he was a Leaver. Their politics really quite far apart. I think the vibes of that contest have kind of seen Rishi painted as this sort of liberal, almost a Cameroon, whereas in actual fact, when you look at the things that they're doing, e.g. protesters getting nicked at the coronation for wearing T-shirts and doing nothing else, those are really socially authoritarian, socially conservative positions to take.
The vibes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a funny story about seeing Suella yesterday.
Go on, shoot.
So there's a back door at the conference. Also, the conference is in an evangelical church. It's not.
I wonder why.
Yeah, but I think.
Should we point out that it is it's an American.
Oh yeah, sorry. It's an American group that have organized this thing, and there's been other ones in other conferences in Miami, etc. It's really like an American style event. It's very American heavy informed. But there's two entrances, the front entrance and a back entrance, and there was word had spread to me and the protesters hanging outside that Suella would be appearing at the back door, and we've been thinking about that.
How many times can you say back door in this?
Back door.
I know, and all I'm thinking is Richard is furious.
But then, so I thought perhaps she'll be walking. So we'd discussed beforehand what if I got the opportunity to doorstep Suella, what should we ask? And we kind of decided it would be like a grabby, how do you sleep at night? So a ministerial car pulls up to the back door. I'm standing about a meter away. There's going to be you'll be able to see her for 10 seconds. So I think, okay, I'll go for the really punchy. I'll only ask, how do you sleep at night? But what I said instead was, do you sleep well?
Fuck's sake.
Do you sleep well, Home Secretary?
Oh my God, I think I heard that. I feel like I saw a Steve Bray video.
No, it's us. We put it in our own content.
Are you sleeping well?
This is like
you look well rested, Home Secretary.
This is like what I said to Ava at the beginning of the podcast. Oh, rested time on holiday. No, I slept terribly. You've basically had like a bit of small talk with the Home Secretary. Brilliant journalism, Ed. You've done a great job there.
You look wonderful.